I'm Michael Burke, and this is Money Talks. Hi, this is part two with Jenny Trick, Executive Director of Racine County Economic Development Corporation, or RCEDC, and we're talking about the art and science of business recruitment, which ultimately is all about jobs and tax base for Racine County and its communities. We left off last time talking about requests for information that come from site selectors, people who may want to bring a company to that isn't currently here. So what might an RFI, as you call them, be seeking? What specifically do they want to know?
Generally speaking, they want kind of that 30,000 elevation perspective. They want to know, first and foremost, what locations are available. Some of the requests for information documents are looking specifically for a building, and some are looking for land, and some might be looking for both options. Unfortunately, a lot of them that we see are looking for buildings. And as you know, Racine County, as well as the region, really has a rather low vacancy rate in respect to industrial buildings.
Current modern industrial buildings. Of course, the city of Racine is full of old, vacant, early 1900s style buildings, but that nobody wants that anymore.
Actually, the vacancy rate includes any property that is actively listed with a multiple listing service. So it includes City of Racine properties as you're describing them. They still have a place within the purview of businesses that are looking for a location. Not everybody has to be on the interstate. So there are companies that are looking elsewhere. And one example was a Mundelein packaging company that we were talking to. Began as a land seeking situation, and as a result of their business growing to such an extent faster than they anticipated, they moved to a building. The building existed in the city of Racine, and so they actually have taken an interest in that building. They have a lease on that building with an option to purchase.
Wow.
And it was all governed by the fact that they needed a building. So it goes back to the request for information documents. We'll look for buildings, land, or some other option, all determined by timing. Businesses sometimes don't have the time availability to them to wait for a building to be designed per their specifications and built. Sometimes they need the building now, and they can convert it or they can add on to it.
And if they haven't done a ton of data gathering, besides looking at potential sites, what else is on that list of things they want to know?
Generally speaking, they're looking first and foremost for the location, and then they'll ask about the cost. So what are the initial costs to get into that property, be it a building or a land? What are the ongoing costs that'll factor in the mill rate, the tax rate of that respective community? Always within that calculation is incentives, because they're always looking for, how do I reduce both my upfront costs as well as my ongoing costs? And then what's becoming far more important, not surprisingly, but labor availability and labor costs. And so those questions are coming up more and more, and it's difficult for you to determine, to give real good information to a prospect or to a site selector, the labor availability, because as you know, the unemployment number
is high, so that would say there are a lot of bodies out there, but it doesn't mean there are a lot of qualified type.
And the
people.
Unemployment number only reveals those people that are actively looking. So there might be people that are part-time that would like to be full-time, or there might be people working somewhere else that want a different opportunity. And so it's difficult to give a real good gauge to site selectors of what's the labor availability. But the best thing that we can do with those available tools is to share the unemployment. And then with our partners at the Workforce Development Center, we can get a better glimpse of what are the recent job fairs that have been going on, what are the numbers that are showing up. And then working with Gateway Technical College too, what are the graduates that are proposed in the different fields? Look to iMET here at the boot camps. What are the graduate numbers looking like, and are they already identified by a company, or could they be up for grabs, so to speak, if we had a company that was coming in?
To indicate those who are about to come out of the pipeline and be available. Yeah, interesting. I can see why that one would be complicated. You have told me in the past that there's a lot of secrecy in the process, and I'm interested in that, and in fact, even some code names are used. I think I once heard about a project that was being called Project Beer, and it had nothing to do whatsoever with beer. Can you even tell what, I don't remember if I founded the company, can you even say what that company was?
It was InSyncGrader.
Ah, that
Yeah,
was
so
their project.
absolutely had nothing to do.
Yeah, absolutely
obviously,
nothing.
And so, yeah, I mean, they're Project Green, Project XYZ, Project
Yeah.
Knows Are Us. They vary in names.
Uh-huh.
And, the secrecy is, in part, the site selector wants the company to remain anonymous. And the company wants that too, because they don't, first of all, want to be contacted. That's the reason they have that arm's length relationship with the site selector on their behalf. But also consider a company that's considering perhaps a new location. You don't want to create concern in the market, either from your customers or suppliers or your employees.
Yeah.
So it's important that they remain anonymous. And it frustrates all of us that are involved because we want to know who it is. We want to validate the credibility of the project and the company that you're working with, but we have to respect that and not try to pursue it too actively.
So at what point does RCEDC actually learn who's behind project such and such?
When it's revealed to us.
And at what point in the process does that typically?
It varies. I mean, it could be midway, it could be early on, certainly before you get too deep into the incentive discussions, because you have to know who you're obligating what to.
Yeah. So why did you use the term with me a few weeks back of the art and science of business recruitment? Where's the art part come in?
Well, first and foremost, we talked about the science.
Yeah.
We've already talked
The
about
hard
the
numbers.
data, the hard numbers.
Yeah.
What are they looking for?
Yeah.
And then you get into a little bit more of the gray matter, where it's the how do you present this information? How do you assemble your team? And that's really where the art comes in. So when you're working with a development group that potentially wants to come in and develop a business park here, develop some spec property, eventually bring in a business for employment opportunities, how do you go about doing that? Who do you bring in with a partner? Is it the municipality? Is it our county executive? Is it state officials? Who are those people? And to a great degree, it's driven by that development team, but also it's important for us to know who the partners are and to tee those partners up, give them as much information as we can in respect to the project that's at hand and the opportunity that's available. And then it's the follow-up. How do you follow up? How much do you follow up? What do you follow up with? It's important, obviously.
When you say what you follow up with, you're referring to phone call or email, or
providing more information, making sure that they're satisfied with the information that you provided. Are there any outstandings? Do we need to pursue some of our partners that maybe haven't fulfilled the information that they said that they would provide? So we jokingly say many of our cards really should say NAG on them, because often that's what we feel like we're doing. But that's the role of an economic development organization, is you're doing that front-end work, you're preparing the infrastructure, the land sites, working with those respective private and public partners, but making sure that everything is being coordinated in a timely way, because this is all so timely. The urgency has to be realized that all of these projects that we're working on are very time sensitive. So we can't delay responses. We have to get the information back to people in a very timely way and in an accurate way. That's kind of that art, that squishy art perspective.
But then not overdoing it, because if you haven't, if a prospect, you use this term, has kind of gone cold, different things could be happening. They could be, well, what are some of the things that...
The different things that could be happening is the project, maybe the timeline has changed. Maybe they're negotiating on another piece of property outside of your county that they need to make sure that those negotiations go successfully before they release you. Or maybe they want to, sometimes they offer two sites and they compete against one another.
Oh, sure.
So there's a variety of factors that go into that. But if they go cold and you don't hear from them for some period of time, you touch them frequently with an email or a phone call, and then you have to kind of wait to see, and then maybe touch again, but then back off.
Of the various factors that a company may be considering, your predecessor, Gordy Casala, often talked about quality of life, so much about quality of life, because a small company can choose to operate from Corvallis, Oregon, or Racine, Wisconsin. How often does that really come up as something that they're looking at and caring about?
It's a factor. It's certainly in people's minds, but with some of these companies that perhaps are a bit more transportation driven, it's really the location.
Yeah.
Does the location make sense? How close am I to a customer or my supplier? How close am I to the interstate? But, recently we did work with a small company that actually is looking forward to moving his business to Racine, primarily because he has his boat in the marina, and he wants to own a home in Racine area, and he wants to have his business in Racine. Largely, again, from the quality of life. The marina is his quality of life, and the lakefront and such. So it does come into play, but it really depends on the prospect.
Yeah.
What's their driving factors?
That makes sense. Do you, all of this process of recruiting, what do you consider a fairly rapid one that came to fruition, and what's an example of one that came to fruition but it was at the long end?
I would say a good example of a rapid one would be the United Natural Foods. We received that request for information document from the site selector, I'm going to say in August of that year, of 2012, I believe it was. And the project was realized and announced later that year. So really over a span of about 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
Did they come into the picture? Did the negotiations get, the site first of all be determined, and then the negotiations be realized to where the project was announced, and then construction in 2013.
Okay.
An example on the other side is a result of one of the Milwaukee 7 initiatives that we participated in respect to going to Germany. There was a German manufacturer that we met with in 2011 that we pursued for a number of years, and he, in fact, just identified a location in Sturtevant here to have his sales office. So 2+ years. So 4
And
months.
that's just to get to the point of having a sales office.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then after that, his plan is distribution would follow, and then manufacturing within 3 to 5 years.
I want to, gonna have to, probably, this is such a deep topic, I'm gonna have to skip some things I'd like to have talked about, but let me ask you this. Roughly how many prospects is RCEDC working with now, and what is 2015 looking like compared to this year?
We have right now probably about 20 prospects that we're actively working with that would fall both into the business retention and expansion bucket as well as the business recruitment.
Okay.
I would say there's more in the business retention and expansion area than recruitment, and largely that's governed by one of the things, as I mentioned, with the request for information is where's the buildings. So we're working in tandem in both of those categories.
But that situation should improve in 2015, as you're aware. There's some projects.
Yeah, we have our
pipeline.
fingers crossed. We have great partners. Land and Lakes bought 60 acres in Mount Pleasant, and they have a building under construction, should be available for occupancy in December of this year. Enterprise Business Park has a significant investment just south of us. HSA, also had those buildings in Mount Pleasant. So
given all of that, does 2015 look brighter, do you think, on the recruitment side?
I hope so. Again, if the history proves to be truthful in the future, a lot of this was driven by buildings. And so with this new building product coming out of the ground, we're hopeful that business recruitment opportunities will be realized of a greater proportion in 2015 than 14.
Okay, looking forward to that. Thanks a lot, Jenny Trick, Executive Director of RCEDC. Thanks for being on the show. Thanks for watching.